чем больше ударов будет
The more
проведено по
strikes
этим
the enemy attempts to carry out against
объектам,
our civilian targets, the more we must, of course, first and foremost do everything necessary to protect these targets and safeguard civilians. But the more attempts of this kind the enemy makes, the larger a security zone we will have to establish in the adjacent territory. Just like the other territories we are discussing today, this is also historically Russian land. We will now summarize this part, and then we will dis. But what I would like to point out is that the Russian armed forces continue to firmly hold the strategic initiative in the area of the special military operation, and the liberation of Konstantinovka is of great strategic importance. As we all know very well, the town is a key transport hub and a major industrial center in the Donbass. It has 20,500 homes, but in a town such as Sumy, which is the regional capital, there are just over 30,000, so the figures are comparable. And the capture of Konstantinovka by the troops of the Southern Group opens up a direct route for further advance towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, other fortified areas in the Donbass, and is undoubtedly the key to the liberation of the entire territory of the Donetsk People's Republic. As for the establishment of a security zone, I shall return to this point later. This is also an important part of the operation, an important part of addressing our common objectives. The command and the military units of the Northern Group are successfully carrying this out and continue to push the enemy forces back from the Russian borders. The decisive role in this undoubtedly belongs to our soldiers and officers, who, in the course of combat operations, demonstrate the finest qualities of the Russian armed forces, such as selfless devotion and love for the motherland, military camaraderie, and brotherhood in arms. I ask that my sincere gratitude be conveyed to all personnel for the courage and heroism they demonstrate every day. And of course, as I have already said, all those who have distinguished themselves most must be put forward for state honors. Now, a few words on the enemy's information and propaganda campaign, featuring the so-called results of the Kiev regime on the battlefield. I would like to point out that both the Kiev regime itself and the so-called European peacekeepers, whose aim is in fact not peace, but the continuation of the war with Russia until the last Ukrainian stands, confirm our assumptions about their true intentions in their statements and indeed in their practical actions. I would like to point out that a joint statement by certain EU leaders dated June 7, 2026 states that they welcome what they described as the Kiev regime's innovative use of unmanned technologies. I have already spoken publicly about this, stating that it was, of course, a purely rhetorical question. Does this mean that they are also referring to strikes against our civilian targets, against civilian infrastructure, against transport carrying civilians and children, and against student halls of residence? Does all this amount to an endorsement of strikes of this kind? However, in this regard, I would like to note that the delivery of massive, concerted strikes against the infrastructure of Ukraine's military-industrial complex and the facilities that support its operation must continue, as these ideas are circulating and are being put into practice, and we must respond accordingly. I would ask that relevant proposals be put forward. It will be done. We must also continue to analyze the extent to which each instigator is involved in prolonging the war in Ukraine. An analysis must be carried out of each of their involvement in actual combat operations. We need this analysis so that we can make responsible decisions in the future. In any case, we may need this. Now, as regards the enemy's supposed successes on the battlefield, we must, first of all, bear in mind that, to bolster its myths and lies, and the statements of liars, the enemy may undertake certain acts of sabotage and terrorism, or launch sorties, albeit with small forces, but with great propaganda fanfare, with the aim of confirming its claims of supposed achievements. We need to be prepared for these possible incursions. And secondly, the grandiose claims made by the leaders of the Kiev regime about successes which, as we know, do not in fact exist, are in principle to our advantage. Since these charlatans are incapable of doing anything else, they have never been taught to do anything else. Their actions and statements undoubtedly serve to disorganize both themselves and their sponsors. I repeat, this works in our favor, and the commanders of the Russian armed forces units must act in a coordinated, rational, and consistent manner, overcoming, of course, the difficulties that are natural under these circumstances, doing everything necessary and possible to preserve the lives of our soldiers and ensure the unconditional fulfillment of tasks in strict accordance with the plan for the special military operation drawn up by the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces.
Выполнение задач в строгом соответствии с замыслом специальной военной операции, разработанным Генеральным штабом Вооруженных сил России.